Vampires aren't real, right? I mean, they're these imaginary creatures brooding in a realm of fantasy and complete seclusion from the outside world. They're half dead, never seen in daylight, surviving by sucking the lives of others, especially beautiful women. Wait a minute. It's easy to facepalm at the ancestors exhuming corpses of vampires to drive a stake through their hearts, and yes, apparently that was a real thing, but it's just as easy to fail to see that these products of imagination still continue to possess people in modern forms. One such possession is gooning, originally the min-maxing of masturbation, which now seems to have spread to be a general term for porn addiction. So I have a very logical question, definitely not coming from being too deep in mythological analysis, which I want to answer today. Could we, by debunking the science of vampires, understand the nature of the gooning culture that's sucking the blood out of so many young men today? To answer this question, I will dissect and analyze the 5 main characteristics of vampires and then put it all together to understand how vampirism could be unknowingly manifesting in your life. So vampires cannot go out into the sun because they get burned by it. They are reclusive creatures of shade, night, and darkness. In other words, they inhabit the realm of the unknown. They sneak up behind you just like a shadow, or even better, get you in your sleep when you're fully submerged into their realm of unconscious. Light is their biggest weakness, and exposure to it causes them excruciating agony. To me, this is a fascinating detail because light, or the sun, is the symbol for consciousness, awareness, and knowledge. That's why classically heroes possess a symbolic resemblance to the sun. It shines on Simba in the beginning of Lion King, and countless fairy tale princesses and princes have golden hair. In English, people even say things have come to light, meaning something that was unknown has become understood. The ancient Greeks had the same dualism with Apollo, the solar god of reason, form, and consciousness, as opposed to Dionysus, the god of ecstasy and wine. So the first characteristic of vampires is that they are anti-conscious, unable to come to awareness without agony. Now, a complementary detail is that they leave no reflection in the mirror, which means they are not self-aware, because awareness is a part of light, of consciousness. To be self-aware is the most painful human experience. It burns. Instincts, compulsions, nature, and death are not self-aware. They are bound to the realm of the unconscious. So the vampire cannot leave a reflection, just like animals cannot see themselves in a mirror. To see yourself in a mirror requires the distinguishing and separating power of consciousness. You must isolate the line between where you end and where the not you begins. The vampire cannot do that. It's psychologically the same story with Narcissus. Even though he appears to be the opposite of the vampire staring at his reflection obsessively, he doesn't actually see himself. He falls in love with the image, dissolves into it, and loses the boundary between himself and the reflection. So the vampire has no reflection, and Narcissus has only reflection. Neither achieves genuine self-awareness. So the second characteristic of vampires is that they cannot consciously glimpse their own image. But what's curious is that vampires are undying. While there are ways to defeat them, the undying part signifies that there's something fundamentally ineradicable about them. Similarly, the Egyptian sun god Ra had to battle Apep, the serpent of chaos, every single night just to be reborn at dawn. The victory of light was never permanent, always in needing of renewal. But vampires are also a different kind of undying, because they're dead yet undead, stuck in between, in many places described as the equivalent of hell, just like the purgatory, the place of souls suspended between worlds. This idea echoes in wandering or lost spirits, in hauntings and unsuccessful ritual passings of the dead to the beyond. Vampires are just the same. They are not beyond this world like the dead, but they cannot live in it either. So the third characteristic of vampires is that they are stuck, unable to change and transition from the one place to the other. Now, the most frightening and iconic feature of vampires is that they drink blood, a mysterious substance only found in what's alive. a substance that life itself depends on. It marks the beginning of the human gift of life-giving. It's also something that was ritually sacrificed to appease the gods, to initiate the young. So blood is psychologically a life force, the source of vitality. That is why the Eucharist is a blood-drinking ceremony. The communicant takes the divine life force into themselves and is transformed by it. Vampires cannot transform. They are cursed with lifeless immortality, with unchanging. To change, to transform, symbolically means to allow parts of you to die, to sacrifice them. But vampires don't do that. Instead, they feed on the blood, life force of others. They choose to exist hidden away from life in their own realm of fantasy, usually symbolized by the castle, and only interact with life through others. So the fourth characteristic of vampires is that they crave life but refuse to enter it, thus resorting to a backseat existence. When they do interact with the living directly, they must be invited in, and they will pull all kinds of tricks to do that. That's because to assert oneself, to come in uninvited, means having a will, which only comes with consciousness. Therefore, vampires, just as with the life force of blood, must borrow someone else's will. They must trick or tempt the conscious one to give it away. It's the same idea as Ate, the goddess of blind folly, who doesn't force herself on anyone but infatuates. The victim doesn't feel coerced, they feel certain, even exhilarated up until destruction. The invitation feels like their own genuine desire, and that's the trick. The vampire finds the weak spot, the hunger for vitality, intensity, or the liberation from ordinary life, mirrors it back, and then the victim opens the door to what they believe is their own deepest wish. It is precisely the Faustian bargain, everything you want and none of the sacrifice. So the fifth characteristic of vampires is that they themselves have succumbed to the temptation of an immortal existence by giving up their own conscious will to live. The trick being that if you never live, you technically never die. I think it's pretty clear now, looking at our analysis, that we have almost the exact psychology of the modern Gooner. Not as in these people are actual vampires, but that behind the personification of vampire lies a psychological archetype. Think of it as a shape that manifests in many different ways throughout history. We understand vampire because it is a symbol for our own undying, life-sucking qualities. We all know the intrusive thoughts about the ex, the addiction getting out of hand, or the torturing reliving of a memory. We also all know someone who refuses to make the obvious sacrifice, to let go of something, or to truly go out into the world and finally risk their own ass. Both within and without, it is a fundamental human reality, hence undying, but only when these things have gotten out of hand and overtaken your personality does the vampire visibly manifest, like in the Gooner. Someone who stays at home in their fantasy world, who is losing their life force, falling into an ever-increasing seclusion and detachment from real people, who is giving up their own conscious will to the algorithms, who, having no society-bound schedule, becomes a creature of the night, who never leaves the house anymore because of the intolerable burning of socializing and being around living people, who's unwilling to suffer the pain of consciously reflecting on their situation and seeing what they've become. A person who lives out their unfulfilled, increasingly infantile desires through others. A Gooner who took the bargain of immortality only to never live. The antidote to vampires is a wooden stake. The stake specifically being made of wood is the most profound thing I've ever seen from a superstitious folklore. You see, the tree is a universal symbol for higher spiritual consciousness because it connects the earth, nature, the unconscious, with the sky, culture, or higher consciousness. So Buddha became enlightened by the tree, Newton discovered gravity doing the same, Jesus was a carpenter, and God appeared to Moses in the burning bush. They all mirror a birth or advance of consciousness. So naturally the science goes that driving a piece of tree through the heart kills the unconscious creature. It becomes aware and thus mortal and living again by dying. It's the poetic reversal of the paradoxical immortality that cursed the vampire that ends up releasing him. To live, one must die, and to die, one must live. So my piece of advice for the Gooner would be to not fall into the endless cycle of self-restraint and relapse, to not hide in the shade or drown in sunscreen, but rather foolishly jump in the water and swim until he gets sunburned. That's all.